Hey, what is up, everybody? Platform Disciple here, and today I'd like to do a brief recap of the competitive tournament that was hosted last month. If you did not see the videos I posted, I participated in this tournament, so you can watch those games on this channel, and I think it is worth your while because I came in second, so the deck I was playing is worth checking out if you're interested in seeing what a more competitive deck looks like, as well as what some other people were using, and overall the competitive feel for Infinity Wars. It was really exciting to experience that part of the game again, because that was a big draw for me way back in the day, was playing ranked, because there's some expectation that people are taking it really seriously, and that you get to see the extreme end of this spectrum in terms of people really engaging the game at its highest level. Before we jump into that, I need to continue to complain about a specific topic that I have already discussed. Some people are going to say I'm beating a dead horse. However, I think the horse is very much alive, and that I will continue to beat this horse until it is dead. And that is, I would like to take a minute here to discuss the leaderboard again. I'm going to keep this brief because it's not the point of the video, but I am going to keep bringing this up because I think it's a huge issue. I came in, I think, top 10 last month, but I don't know because it doesn't matter. I don't care if I came in top 10. The only things that matter in the leaderboard are top 3. And even with this very tiny player base, coming in top 3 is a very hard thing to do, and is frankly a miserable experience. I have already done it, and it's not worth it. It doesn't feel good. And it's rough. But let's continue down this rabbit hole and continue to beat the horse. So one of the problems here is that I came in top 10, but I didn't play that many games last month. Truth is, it's the same faces in the top 10 every month because there isn't a lot of incentive for more casual players to continue to play the game. Frankly, there's not a lot of incentive for me to play the game. And the only reason I do it is because I think it's fun. And playing the game for fun is a great reason to play. But I think the game, given that having a small player base is a very big problem for the game should do more to reward players for playing games. And currently, you're only rewarding 3 players, and it's not great. So let's get into that. XP, which you get for playing the game, should convert to rewards. But it doesn't really. So the problem here is that the leaderboard is exclusive. And then we have the Prestige Pass, which I am certain that I am not the only person. As a matter of fact, I'd be shocked if many people who play the game regularly haven't completed this Prestige Pass. You complete it very quickly. And I'm not saying make the Prestige Pass longer. I mean, I think that could help. But the Prestige Pass also gives out, frankly, rewards that are things that I already got because I paid for the Kickstarter. And I know other people are in that situation. There isn't a whole lot in this reward track that feels like I'm getting rewarded. And either way, I've completed it. So the problem with that is XP doesn't do anything for me. And I have these daily quests, which everybody has. And I like completing the daily quests, but they also don't really do anything for me, because they give you XP for completing them and a very small amount of gold. The small amount of gold is appreciated, and I think the quests are fun for the most part, but they don't do anything, because XP is not meaningful. So, please, change the leaderboard. Change how you distribute rewards. Keep the leaderboard. And reward the top 3 players with something like, you have these badges. I have an empty badge spot. I'm just waiting for you to add more badges, because I I've already got the badges that I've put my level 3 badges on display. Or my juiciest badges on display, and I still don't have another badge. And I came in top. I think, I came top. I came top number 1 during that month. I have the title. So that would be cool to do something like that for the leaderboard, and then give these cool cards, or give something cool that is exclusive that you can only get per month to other players. Look at that, we got a Endless Horde. Love it. So yeah, please do that. It has to be exclusive. It has to be something that XP converts to. I really think it should be these gold stamped cards. And maybe there's some concern that, oh, these gold stamped cards are tradable, and you would like them to maintain some kind of value. If you gate them behind 1 million XP or 2 million XP, they will still be hard to get. They just won't be miserable to get. And will there be more of them? Yes. But right now, I own more gold stamped cards than there are players online. So they're not worth anything. And they won't be unless you encourage people to play the game. So give them out. They cost you nothing to give to players. And if you tell players that playing the game will get them something, then they will play the game. But right now, I queue up and do a couple games every other day, and then I call it done because there's nothing else for me to do. And I think that's a big issue. So let's wrap it up there. That's all we need to know about the leaderboard. Hopefully that didn't take too long, but I'm going to keep talking about that because the horse is alive. I really hate the leaderboard system, and it's been like that for a long time. Throughout the history of Infinity Wars, it's been like that, and it's always been bad, and it discourages people from playing the game. So on a related note, tournament was great. Playing competitively was great. Sideboarding, something that's unique to playing competitively, was also great. And I have had concerns that the best of 3 format and sideboarding might discourage newer players from playing ranked. But what really discourages players from playing ranked, and I know there's not a game mode out yet, but this was a problem back then too, was that there were no rewards for players outside of like the top 10. Nothing that mattered. So do not use the reward system, the leaderboard reward system, for ranked either. Do what every other game does. Every other game. And have a system where people reach certain benchmarks, bronze, silver, gold, and onwards. And maybe you have really exclusive rewards way up there, but limiting the number of players who get the rewards to a tiny handful of entrenched veterans who are going to duke it out and have a frankly miserable time duking it out over the measly number of rewards given is not good. It's not good for casual players, and it's not good for competitive players. It's not good for anyone. It's not good for the game. Having rewards that are exclusive is good, but they should be exclusive, hard to get, and not massively contested for among a tiny number of players. Okay. All right. So let's move on. So the tournament, very cool. Liked playing competitively, but it has given me the opportunity to talk about a couple of cards that I think are a little sketchy. Everybody knows at this point that myself and many other players in the game have very strong opinions about certain cards. And those are opinions, so I'm not suggesting that these cards get changed necessarily, but I think they're worth discussing because I think the tournament showcased that these 3 cards that I used are, in addition to being what I think are kind of unfun cards to play against, also are quite good. And I think that that combination is particularly rough. That you can debate how good a card is, but if a card is both really good and not very fun to play against, I think that is a problem. Because the deck I played, the Grimish deck, I have had that deck brewing for a long time, but I don't play with it in casual because it is mean. It is a very rough deck to play against for anyone, and even when you beat it, it doesn't feel great. So let's start by talking about the man himself, Grimish. Let me open that up real quick. Cool. So Grimish. Grimish is a fun card because he's high risk, high reward. He's fun in theory, but in practice, what happens is often it makes the game feel like it's won or lost out of nowhere and doesn't feel like it's meaningfully in control of either player. It really comes down to, like, did they get lucky and draw the pieces they needed to kill Grimish? And if they did, that doesn't feel like a satisfying victory even for the player who kills the Grimish. And because of that, I think Grimish is kind of a toxic card. I don't think Grimish is too good, but I don't think you play against Grimish a whole lot and then come away from those games feeling happy, even if you've won half of those games or more. Combination of the fact that I did very well with this card, I think, is an indication that this card could be a problem if there was more incentive for people to play this kind of style of deck. Because if there was a ranked mode, I would be grinding with this deck, and it would be rough. I know Grimish has counters. I know the deck I played had counters, but just because it has counters doesn't make it fun to play against. That you don't want your game to feel like it's like, oh, I drew the double hulking sniper, I feel like a skilled player, because it doesn't feel good to win that way. It just feels awkward. So basically what I want to say is that I think Grimish would benefit from having a severe drawback, but one that is not lose the game. And to compensate for that, I think the card should have less attack and health. So like, let's say maybe he's a 12-12 or even a 10-10, but make his morale cost 50 and make it when he dies. Your fortress takes 50 damage. So the game is not over, but a significant thing has happened that has progressed the game. So that's my 2 cents on Grimish. I think the card in its current form is very toxic. I don't think it creates a healthy game to have a card like this in this game, especially when it's good. Even when it's bad, I don't think it's a healthy card to have in the game, so I would prefer he do something like you lose 50 morale, you lose 50 health. Instead of lose the game outright, because then you get to continue to play the game. Whether you're the player who killed Grimish or you're the player playing Grimish, you get to continue to play the game after Grimish has been on the board, instead of it just instantly ending. Okay, let's talk about our next card, and this is a controversial one. Not just for me, for everyone. That's Scramble. If you watch the matches, I played Scramble a lot, and my opponents, there were a few Scrambles running around there. Scramble, undeniably, is a very powerful card. It is kind of a board wipe. It kind of buffs your guys. Most of the time you play it, you will, like, you tend to win if you're both playing decks that have characters. You tend to win by playing Scramble. And there isn't a way for opponents to meaningfully play around it. Cards like Mass Death, for example. Mass Death, you can know your opponent has a Mass Death and make a informed decision about how many characters you want to commit to the battlefield. Whereas Scramble, you can know your opponent has Scramble, and short of playing Counterspell, there isn't really much you can do, because you can stop playing characters, but if you stop playing characters, then your opponent doesn't need to play the Scramble ever, and they'll just win the game off of you not playing anything. And then that brings into the equation, let's talk about the randomness. I think random effects can be very fun. I like random effects. I think Defiant Monk, for example, I think this card's pretty nifty. It's pretty cool. But the difference here is that Scramble has proven itself to be a top competitive card. I think that's fair to say. I don't think that's unreasonable to say that it's a very competitive card. And it is a competitive card that has an extreme amount of variance. The outcomes for what can happen off of a Scramble are a complete... It's anything can happen. Most of the time the player who plays Scramble comes out on top, but sometimes something really stupid happens, and it skews the game even further. It could be the Scramble player just outright wins immediately because they rolled high, or sometimes the Scramble backfires. And I know that the randomness could be seen as a disadvantage to the card. However, I think the problem is that if this card shows up very frequently, competitively, then a lot of games are going to get decided on what happens when Scramble resolves. And you can watch my matches. That did happen. Sometimes you Scramble and something stupid happens. So let's talk about the last thing I want to say about Scramble, which is that it occupies this 8-cost slot and has this big AoE buff, debuff kind of effect. And the problem there is we already have a card that does that in the same slot for Exiles. And I think what I want to get at here is that Volatile Genome, which is a far less like swingy card, this card tends to behave pretty consistently. This card is just blatantly outcompeted by Scramble. So what's the solution here? I don't know. I don't like asking for cards to get nerfed, but I would like to see, I think a start could be that I don't think that Scramble needs Exile 6. I think the card's already insanely good at 8 cost. It doesn't need Exile 6. And I would like to see that Exile 6 moved onto Volatile Genome. And I think, and this is just me spitballing game theory. I have no idea what the outcome would be, because I think Scramble would still be the better card. But my hope would be that maybe, just maybe, we'd see a little more Volatile Genome in competitive decks and a little less Scramble. I'm okay with seeing Scramble once in a while, but when everybody's running Scramble, it's just a complete nightmare. Okay. Last card I want to talk about, and this is, again, a really controversial one, and this actually is a card that I routinely complain about offline to friends of mine who are vaguely interested in the game. Some of them have played it here and there, and some of them have stopped playing, which I will, again, just to beat the dead horse here, one of my friends came in the top 3 because he was trying to get top 1 on leaderboard, and that experience was so bad for him that he basically quit. So I think the leaderboard, again, is not a recipe for retaining players. It's a recipe for creating burnout in your veteran players and not rewarding your casual players. But anyways, Evil-Lee, a card I complain about a lot. I use this card came in second. Gaming Squiddle came in first with this card. And there were no other common cards in our deck. That we played completely different decks from each other, but we both used Evil-Lee. I want to begin by saying I really, really think Evely is a lot better than people give it credit for, and I think even when people are using cards that counter Evely, like Humble, I think Evely is still a pretty solid card. That if my opponent humbles my commander, it turns out a lot of commanders are just weak to Humble. And I think it's a common misconception that when Evely gets humbled, that the deck just falls apart. I don't think that's really true. I think the decks frequently continue to perform reasonably well. Obviously, the card's weak to Humble, but that's besides the point. I want to talk about Evely from two perspectives. One, the card being really good, and two, I think the card can be very unfun to play against. And confusing, for that matter. So let's talk about the card being good. The tournament had a very small number of players, didn't have every deck represented, and there was a finite number of games played. So the fact that Evely decks took first and second place is not really evidence that Evely is broken per se, but it does indicate that Evely is at least competitively viable. I think that's reasonable to say, but I'm not saying it's broken. So that's out of the way. Let's talk about why Evely is quite good. Evely does a couple things. One is she makes it so you always have a way to spend your resources, so your curve is very, very smooth. The second component of this is that she lets you have very predetermined set of turns that a lot of your commanders are going to influence how you play your first few turns, but with Evely decks, even up to like your fourth or fifth turn of the game can be like scripted, where you know exactly what's going to happen, and even to the extent that your hand, the cards in your hand don't really matter as long as Evely is up, because she picks the best cards out of your deck for each turn for you every turn. So there's that. And then the part of this that Gaming Squiddle abused is that she lets you cheat on resources by swapping characters that are produced by other characters for real cards. So I'm trying to remember. Hopefully I can find it real quick. Squiddle was playing a card that you poop out a demon with it. And both the demon and the card can be swapped for better cards using Evely. Let's see. Here we go. Neophyte Summoner. So Neophyte Summoner can be swapped for a 3-drop after it makes the demon. And the demon can be swapped for something too. So it lets you cheat on resources. And then let's talk about the why is this Evely kind of frustrating to play against. For newer players, Evely takes cards from hidden zones, so the deck, that you don't get to know that they're coming. You can't read the cards. They just magically appear on the battlefield. And Evely is responsible for all of this. And those cards that she pulls out, you have to deal with, and you have to deal with Evely, and it can be very overwhelming. So that's very frustrating to play against, and for a newer player, it can be really confusing, like, why is all this junk showing up on the battlefield that is blatantly outpacing me? The other aspect of her being frustrating, I think, is that she lets some really stupid things happen, and those stupid things aren't even consistent across decks. So we have, like, Gabrielle, for example. This is a unique character that Evely lets you get multiple out. It also lets you put her directly on the battlefield, and that's just obnoxious. And that's just the tip of the iceberg with Evely, because she does so much. So let's talk about why her doing so much poses a problem for balancing her. Evely currently enables I think some really, really powerful competitive decks, including the one I played, as well as a lot of casual decks. She is a linchpin card that makes some of those decks possible, that they aren't possible without her. An example is the Calmando deck. And just to quickly flex here, I got a gold foil Calmando just the other day. But the Calmando deck really relies very heavily on Evely, and any changes to Evely could potentially screw up somebody's deck. And that deck wasn't necessarily the deck that was being targeted. But I want to argue that even when Evely is doing fair things, those things are still not necessarily fun to play against. And I think it's also sad and unfortunate that certain cards will never get to see more support, Calmando being one of them, possibly because putting another cow into the game, if it costs 1 or 2 resources, is going to let Evely do more stupid things with the cow deck, and the cow deck might actually get to be really, really good. It's already okay. I don't think there's an easy answer to it. So for now, I think you just leave Evely as is, because I think even if you nerf her, she's still unfun to play against. But if I was going to nerf her, I think some things that could happen would be, one, I think she could potentially maybe not let you swap characters directly onto the battlefield, which basically gives every card in your deck haste. That's a thought. Another thought is that currently she has 10 health, which makes her very, very much safe from the majority of removal that can target command zones early. And there is removal that can target her later. Like, you can slap an Annihilate on her. But the trouble is she may have already kind of done her thing at that point. But I think Evely, if she went down to 8 health, would be vulnerable to cards like Banish. She'd also be vulnerable to double Lightning Blast, which is notable. She'd be weak to multiple Yuan-Shi's Wrath, which would, again, another element there. And all of this would be cool, but again, all that would do would be make Evely worse. It wouldn't necessarily make her fun to play against. So that's kind of where I'm at with the card right now. I really hate the card. I really think the card shouldn't exist the way it is. I would be okay with all of the Evely decks vanishing from existence, because I think the ones that are really obnoxious, like the one I played, the Grimish deck, I think those decks ceasing to exist would be good for the game. That I think the deck I played, the Grimish deck, is not healthy for the game, and I will continue to play it if there are tournaments and ranked mode, because it's good. Evely is only part of why it's good. So hopefully you all enjoyed hearing me just kind of ramble. This wasn't like a super planned out video, but I thought it was be a good opportunity to kind of discuss some of these things. Some people have already kind of chatted with me a little bit on the Discord, but I thought it might be fun to turn it into a video. So yeah, I think Grimish, very toxic card. Scramble, very fun card that is too competitive for how fun it is. And then there's Evely, which I think is being sorely underestimated by players who think she's not as competitive. I think, first of all, she is. And then either way, I think, regardless of how competitive she is, I think she can be very frustrating to play against, because if you don't have those Silver Bullet humble effects or other Silver Bullet effects that deal with her, she does really obnoxious things, can be immune to the variants that ordinarily card games you have to deal with. Like, she just lets you play from your deck instead of from your hand. Yeah. That wraps it up, folks. And again, leaderboard. Do something. Say something. I want to play the game more. A lot of people want to play the game. Put more people in the queue. Get more people in the queue by offering them something for being in queue for completing games. You are not offering something for completing games right now. Not anything that motivates a veteran player like me, who's already got most of the cards. So I need something exclusive. And for the casual player, you're not motivating them because they don't think that they can get in the top 3, and they can't. They really can't. It's extremely limiting. Okay. It's been fun, folks. Until next time, take it easy.